Hey everybody, this one is going to be about symbols. This is my wall of symbols here. Over the years I've learned that keeping symbols in bags, keeping symbols stacked up together isn't really the wisest option when it comes to keeping your symbols clean. They can, corrosion can start to happen, and especially on bronze symbols, B20s for sure. So I've since then put them up like this, and they're just awesome to look at when you're playing, and it's, you know, it's a nice inspiring environment to see your symbols up and out in the open. Even if you're not using them, it's very easy to get them and interchange them. This one is about symbols and why I made a very critical switch to B8 symbols, which is all over Paiste symbols, best symbol company in the world. I first attempted seriously to learn my swing on a B20 symbol in Boston. And as you know, the Zildjian factory is not far from Boston. And this is the baby I got. Now this is Constantinople 22-inch medium ride. It's a beautiful symbol, hand hammered all the way. Right? Beautiful symbol. And I played a lot on this symbol about more than 25, almost 30 years ago. And the phone is not going to pick up anything, but I'll just do it anyway. Okay? What's the difference? B20s and B8s. We're not going to talk about the lathing and the hammering techniques. That obviously has a considerable effect on the symbol. But just the B8s and the B20s. B8, if you're new to this whole thing, B8 means that there's 8% 10 in the symbol. B20 is 20% 10 in the symbol. The rest being copper. So having, this is a B20 alloy, having more tin in the symbol creates a very, very, very different environment, harmonic environment of the symbol. It creates a lot more inconsistency between symbols of the same series. This one, I remember going to a shop in Boston, right around Berkeley, Jack's Drum Shop, and literally telling them, okay, I'm ready to buy a cymbal. 18 years old, ready to buy a cymbal, and I want it to be Constantinople, and show me where's your selection. And I sat there with my stick and just played 1,000 of them. You know how many they had there. They probably had, I don't know, maybe 20 or so. And you have to play through them, because even if it's two medium Constantinople rides, 22 inches, they don't sound at all alike. That's one of the notorious problems of B20 cymbals. They don't sound at all alike. You cannot just call up Zildjian and say, send me a 22-inch Constantinople, because your previous one broke, cracked, or whatever, or got lost or stolen, and they'll send you one that sounds exactly like the one you had. That will never work. It will never work. B20 cymbals are notorious for this, and when you get into cymbal hunting and the drummers that go to other countries to find cymbals, Turkey, Constantinople, anyway, into the countries that really manufacture a lot of B20 cymbals, you hear stories of how musicians search through and try and find that cymbal that really works for them. I remember one of them, a rumor of Bill Stewart doing this. I don't know if that's true or not, but just goes to show that it's a part of that cymbal love, searching for the cymbals that you like. Now, B20s are very, very inconsistent, number one. But there was a time when, you know, I was playing this cymbal for a long time, 25 years ago, and recording with it, and then when I moved to Paris, you know, and my ears started to grow, and I started to admit to myself courageously that, you know, something bothers me about my cymbals. I don't know what it is. The cymbal's obviously of an immense value. You're looking at a cymbal that's, I mean, the pinnacle of Constantinople Zildjian cymbals. This is one directly, I mean, because I bought it in Boston, it most likely came directly from the Zildjian factory close by. And in the late 90s means that this is one of the first batch. You know, there's no serial number on this, which there is with Paistes, so you can't really even tell what number this is. Anyway, but I remember saying to myself, you know, something is off. I just don't understand this thing. You know, what's going on? I'm playing these cymbals in rock and reggae and jazz and funk and fusion music and country music, and it's not mixing properly, whether it's being recorded or I'm in live situations and you're playing and guitar solo happens and you go for the cymbal and there's something there that just bothers you, that just rubs you the wrong way. And so I was thinking, like, what? I don't understand what's going on. These are obviously really quality cymbals. I had the 20-inch, the little brother of this one, same deal, 20-inch Constantinople of the same period in the late 90s. And I was like, this can't be. You know, I don't understand what's going on. At the time, I was playing vintage UFIP Italian B20 hi-hats, really light, And so it was, B20 environment. And I was just like, I don't understand. These are all quality cymbals, and they're bothering me. So then I started to look into recordings and what cymbals were being used in recordings. And that's when I discovered that basically all rock, a lot of ballads, R&B stuff, a lot of country music, a lot of music that I grew up with loving in the 80s, some in the 70s, but definitely in the 80s and the 90s, but surely in the 80s, were B8 alloy cymbals. Whether you're talking Lionel Richie, whether you're talking Van Halen, 80s hair bands, there's a ton of music out there that is enveloped in B8 environments, behind guitar solos, during, you hear them, on the hats. Led Zeppelin, for example, that's another huge one where you are hearing B8 sound. That's prior 1980s, right? So I realized that, wow, alloys have a really big difference, make a big difference to me. And I was going for this sound I grew up hearing and loving, Toto, and because it's Pocaro was playing B8 cymbals, a lot of B8 cymbals. He was playing at some point, I'm sure, sound formula, Paiste sound formulas, before the signature lines came out, and then traditionals he'd already passed. So I realized that, wow, the alloy, I gotta pay more attention to the alloys that I'm buying, not just the company, not just the brand, not just the size, not just the hammering, it's the alloys. Okay, so I went, after I discovered that, I also discovered a cymbal, that an alloy that was worked on in the 60s, NS12 nickel silver cymbals. There's not silver, but anyway, NS12 cymbals, and those are, do I have any here? No, I don't. I have them in the back. Hold on, I can pause it. Hold on, I got my stop. Pause. So here is an NS12 cymbal. This is, it has a stamp on it, Dixie, Switzerland. Right there. Okay? Now, this is essentially a Paiste cymbal. Paiste was experimenting with NS12 alloy before they finally settled on the workability and the harmonic precisions of B8 sounds. Nickel cymbals, NS12 cymbals. Now my phone is terrible for capturing the harmonic environment here, but you get the gist. NS12 cymbals typically have a wonderful bell sound, really smoky. They all kind of do, but piercing at the same time. There's a higher frequency there that I'm hearing that creates that smokiness over top of the core note. They vibrate a lot. There's a lot of resonance, especially when you get to the edge, as you can hear. It's a very glassy sounding cymbal. When you go back into 60s music, Beach Boys, Beatles, you go back into all of that 60s stuff, you will hear these cymbals. If they weren't being played, how should I say this? Recordings, even jazz, you'll hear NS12 cymbals in jazz. They have a wonderful recording quality to them, but they're not as dark and dissonant as a B20 cymbal. However, they are inconsistent. They all don't sound the same, it's kind of hit or miss. Finding one that you really like. So as I was searching through these alloys and learning about NS12 cymbals, I found a few that I really liked, enough to create kind of a complete NS12 environment around my kit. I have another Dixie that's unbelievably dry. It's the driest nickel NS12 cymbal I've ever heard in my life. You just kind of can go at it as much as you want. It just won't explode like a B20 or B8 cymbal. But anyway, this cymbol would work beautifully in a Beach Boys song. You might not hear it over the phone, but it has this very prominent 60s vibe to it. Beach music. It can work a little bit in blues, but it's not. It's more of a 60s psychedelic beach music. Some kind of folkish kind of vibe. The Animals, some Motown. You could do Motown stuff with this cymbal. But it doesn't work across the board. It doesn't work in country music. It doesn't work in funk music. Kind of and not really. It doesn't work in rock music for sure. It's not explosive enough. And the harmony is very disturbing behind classic, behind power chords and behind classic harmonic environments that you find in pop music. It's too tang, it's too clangy, So after going through that, they're also very fragile, or not fragile, but pliable. You can bend them, and they typically have bending marks, like you can right here. See, nickel NS12 cymbals typically have those bends like you could have on pots and pans, So I said, okay, that's cool. I get that, but I'm still not there yet. I'm trying to find cymbals that work with everything that I play: rock, pop, funk, jazz, reggae, country, soul, R&B, ballads, the popular styles, And I was just like, I just don't understand what's going on. and then recalling that most of the music that I was loving in the 80s was, again, that B8 thing. Now, what is that B8 thing? Why is the fact that it's 8% 10 such an amazing difference between B20, 20% 10? This one, NS12, is just not going to cut it for all those styles. It sounds too, I don't want to say cheap, but it sounds too small bar cafe, drummer in the corner sound. It doesn't have a wonderful fullness to it that the B20s do, but the B20s, okay, whether it's the Constantinoples or whether it's something like this is a Zilko. Zilko, this one in particular is like pre-Avitas, your classic, just straight up Zildjian Avitas cymbal. Before they went into the A's, the lathing is the same, and this works really well in 70s music because B8s were just taking off in the 70s with Led Zeppelin, for example, but most people were playing B20 cymbals and the NS12 cymbals. Mostly B20 cymbals. So this works really well in 70s style music and before. You hear that, if you're talking about the Allman Brothers and the Doobie Brothers, you're talking about those kind of blues music in the 70s, surely before that, because B8s didn't exist. So it works with that stuff, but it still bothered me in jazz. It still bothered me when I went to play funk stuff. Not every funk song, but it still bothered me enough, and I was just unbelievably unsatisfied with this. My ear just couldn't figure out what was going on. And I learned that B20 cymbals, I don't know if if you go into studio production, you'll hear this word called phasing. And you have to get your phases right. It's in the harmonies. They will intersect and cross and create phasing, which is harmonic dissonance. And this is why B20 cymbals are often characterized as dark, complex, the word being used, complex rides, because the phasing that occurs when you use B20 alloy creates dissonance across the harmony, across the harmonic spectrum. So you're hearing not just one note, you're hearing several notes, and they are intersecting and phasing against each other. And the lathing and the hammering can enhance that or make it worse. But the dissonance there, the phasing, which also creates, technically speaking, it's called harmonic beat or something like that. It's called, it's where the phasing, the notes that are intersecting create a repetitive beat in the harmony, in the resonance, that's not as long as you might think, like a whoa, whoa, like this, but like a whoa, whoa, whoa. It bounces, creating a sense of a beat in the harmony. Not enough to contribute to interfering with the beats you're playing, but all of this mixed up like in a blender, it creates a lot of dissonance. A lot of dissonance. And that dissonance is really interfering when you listen to guitar solos and you listen to singers and you listen to, you know, all kinds of environments. You don't want that dissonance. I didn't. I wanted to know the note I was playing, and I wanted to hear that projection and that precision and have it clean. And if I wanted a darker cymbal, I might look into maybe different lathing or hammering techniques on a B8 cymbal, but not through a B20 cymbal. They are typically very, very, very dark and complex. Some of them can sound downright scary, harmonically. So like, for example, if you really want a scary album, you know, death metal, use B20s. That's going to contribute. If you want a joyful, well, that's another subject. But, so, there's something else. Not only do B20 cymbals have this really complex phasing going on within themselves, the fact that it's B20 pulls out more of a bottom end of the cymbal. So on all B20 cymbals, you will hear the lower frequencies projected a lot. Just for a prime example, go play an A custom Zildjian cymbal. When you hit those crashes, you will hear a very prominent low end come out of them. On top of the higher ends and the mediums are there, but that low end is definitely there. And they create a very, typically drummers will say, a gongy sound. This one for sure. You hear the whoa, you know, that low air resonance going on. All B20s do this. You won't ever hear a B20 cymbal, ride, crash, or hats that don't have a prominent bottom into them. It's just the nature of the alloy. It projects that bottom note a lot more than B8s. So you have the phasing and the interference of the notes going on in the B20 cymbals, plus now adding that prominent bottom end, it creates a lot of complexity. This is why jazzers tend to initially go for a B20 cymbal, because they want that complexity. But you are basically dedicating that cymbal to jazz. It will not sound complementary in a lot of pop, rock environments. It can, but you have to find the right one amongst hundreds where you're actually finding the B20 cymbal that doesn't sound like a B20 cymbal to blend in properly on a Lionel Richie song, to blend in properly on a Toto song. So yes, you might find them, but again, you're not looking for a B20 sound if that's what you're trying to find. You're trying to find a kind of a calmer, more reserved thing that actually approaches a B8 alloy. Now, well, let's do this the real way. Here is Paiste 505. These were pretty much 404, 505, pretty much the poor man's giant beat, let's say. It is a very robust B8 ride. at this time, when they were making these, you can find them, the thickness of the cymbal in today's standard pretty much puts it in the crash category, unless you get a heavy 505. And one of the wonderful things about B8s is you no longer have the phasing problem, which is unbelievable. It's not dissonant, and you don't have those notes interfering with each other and creating this beat pattern in the wave. And the nature of B8s creates very consistent mid-range harmonies, and especially high-range frequencies up on the top end of the frequency spectrum. The low notes that you have typically in B20s are less prominent, so you don't have an enormous, a very long decay. You don't have the gongy thing that happens that just carries on and on in the bottom. It's typically more precise, controlled, cleaner, and more controllable because of that. The bottom end is not there. It is, but it's not even close to a B20. It sounds glassy. It sounds, you hear the note. There's no problem going, well, what is that note? You might not know what note it is, but you hear it. It sounds like a line. When you hit it, it doesn't, you don't have the impression that there's just a chord going on. There actually is, but it's a very controlled chord. B8s also have a wonderful dome bell. That's the bell that you want. When you're going for it and you just want a bell, you don't want complexity in your bells when you're playing pop and rock and funk. You don't want to have all the complexity. You want to work on your playing and your technique, and listen to how the cymbals are blending with the guitar parts, the voices, the piano, the sax solo. So B8s B8s in the 80s just kind of took over the scene because drummers got hip to this sound and realized, whoa, these cymbals don't get in the way. They're consistent. If I play I have two 505s here. They sound the same. Very, 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 very close. And this one is made in Germany. The other one's made in Switzerland. They sound almost identical. So drummers are starting to say, wow, this is exactly what we need behind the guitar solo, behind the chorus, behind the singers, behind the piano parts, in the ballads, when you play them soft. It's just a nice sound. It doesn't sound like you're hitting pots and pans. I don't want to, if I crash either, it's going to explode my phone, but I used these 505 20-inch rides as crashes. If ever I were to do like a Van Halen gig, I would have these. I have several of them. I have a 404 that is just as nice. 404 22-inch. Check it out. Here it is. 22-inch. again, the phone is not giving this justice at all. This would work really well in actually a lot of stuff. In a lot of pop world stuff. Pop rock. You know, they do have their better and better styles than others. But B8s typically, you talk to any engineer, they work across the board. They record really, really well. And one of the other nice things about B8 cymbals is that because they become very hypnotic, if you really listen, there's a high frequency going on that you can't hear in this phone that persists. And it's like angels, just, you know, really up in the top register when you hit them, and that high frequency just keeps going, and it adds so much shimmer and like, you know, angel dust in the Faith No More. Anyway, adds that angel dust, you know, between the guitars, between the sax and the piano and the voice. It adds that nice little glassy shimmer to everything. Mixes really, really well with old school amplifiers, guitar amps, you know. So these are the old school, you know, poor man's giant beat. Then comes along so Paiste finally zeroed in on their B8 alloy and comes out with 2002. After, I have it up here, I should have shown that first, Istanbul 65, which is right here. Don't want to crash anything. So this is a Istanbul 65 cymbal. This is pre-2002. This is one of the first B8 cymbals. There it is, right there. You can see up there, Istanbul Paiste, and it has the serial number. You can check out when it was made. And so this one, there might be some recordings of Zeppelin where John Bonham is playing Istanbul 65. You can hear that kind of train motor thing in that. It's got a nice thing under that's not too far down in the harmony, but you can hear that the resonance that's very conducive of like a Bonham engine, which is, if anything, this is probably the poor man's giant beat, because a giant beat has that kind of you have the feeling like it's got really, really precise lathing, like the giant beat does, like hairline lathing, and it creates this very nice shimmer, like fine flour, you know, finer than salt, that where the sounds you can hear are just really, really, really fine. Really fine. Anyway, so Istanbul 65, it has 65 written on right after the Istanbul. That's how you know. They're not all like that. I don't know if you can see it. You can kind of see the little mark right there, 65. So this is the predecessor of giant beats. John Bonham then plays giant beats. He's known for the giant beat series. And hold on. out comes 2002. Wasn't made in 2002. It's been around since the 80s, late 70s. It didn't always have this red logo, right? Before it had this red logo, it was just a stamp, 2002. I have crashes. Here's my 2002 hats. These ones, wow, these ones are highly coveted vintage 2002s that sound unbelievable. If ever I get playing on a big stage, I'm going to be using these. These ones are the ones. Vintage 2002s, the thickness is perfect for jazz, rock, pop, reggae, country, soul, R&B, blues on the big stage. They're a little bit more, they project a little bit more than the ones I'm using now because I'm not yet on big stages. I have big beats, 15-inch big beats, which are awesome, thinner, good for jazz stuff as well. But anyway, these ones, beautiful. And because they're B8 alloys, they don't have that weird complexity and darkness that you get with a B20 set of hats, which really interferes with stuff when you're playing pop and you're playing rock and you're hearing this thing and it's just not, it bothered me. So anyway, before Paiste put the 2002 logo, it was just a stamp. You can see right there. Yeah, up there. Okay? So, man, I got so many. So, that I love. Now, these ones, this is the coveted 2002 18-inch Crash Ride. Crash. Now, these ones you will always see. This is one of John Bonham's favorites. The industry kind of thinks that because there was always one there. He always had, it appears, an 18-inch 2002 Crash Ride. Now, these ones are from the period. They are not with the red logo, right? They got the serial number. I have two of them. They're awesome. They are awesome. They have that, they're very explosive, but they have that high-end thing that works really, really well in acoustic charged environments like Led Zeppelin. I hope that didn't explode my phone. I'm not hitting it as hard as I would like to. You have to, these ones, they're thick enough, their thickness demands that you hit them a little harder to get the harmonies to interact properly. But just a very controlled, clean line of sound. It's not disruptive. You either like it or you don't, but it's not disruptive. There's nothing going on in the cymbal that's irritating itself, complex-wise, right? So after Paiste zeroes in on it, you know, on the B8 alloy, from those comes the red logo, and this one is not talked about enough. I wanted to get a new Paiste Crash, called them up, and this is a 20-inch Crash 2002. This one has an unbelievable shimmer to it, just rings like angels. And there's a video I put out where I'm just showing, I just got it, and I'm just laying swing time on it, and you hear it sounds like a big band. It just coasts like you want in a big band thing, you know. And when you go back to a lot of those old recordings, you'll hear that high frequency in the drumming. So I don't know if they got that through the recording, the way they were recording, or if the drummers were playing B8 alloy cymbals, but the recording qualities, the recording lends itself to thinking that they are B8s. Just a very nice cymbal, nice sound. Doesn't sound like I'm playing pots and pans, you know. There's not that weird complexity of a B20. It's just, it is what it is. Sounds like a piece of glass. The domes, the bells are all beautiful. And one of the great things sounds like the 1980s. When you check out Van Halen, he's like surrounded by 2002s. He loved that cymbal, Alex Van Halen. One of the only big 80s bands that I found that didn't use 2002s or didn't use B8 sound, B8 alloys, was Aerosmith. Aerosmith is Joey Kramer's using B20s. He's using Zildjians, and you hear a kind of older 70s cymbal alloy environment in Aerosmith, and he gets away with it. Another guy that got away with playing Zildjians in that pop realm, in a stardom way, and you know, that really succeeded beyond a lot of other groups, is Vinnie Colaiuta playing with Sting back in the 90s. He was playing A custom cymbals, and so you hear that sound. But apart from those, a lot of the other drummers were playing B8s. Michael Jackson, that's John J. Robinson, Jeff Porcaro, those guys are B8 guys. They've since then changed. Vinny's now with Paiste, so he's gone into the B8 world, although he's, I think, endorsing the Modern Essentials, which is Paiste's approach to attacking the complexities of a B20, and they are definitely succeeding, in my opinion, better than Zildjians and Sabians, but hey, to each his own, right? So you have a wonderful projection. You don't have the complexity of B20s, that B20 alloy that just kind of interferes with a lot of stuff. If you're tuned into that, it will bother you. So as I was going, investigating these alloys, I started to realize, wow, that is the problem. That's what was bothering me. And now I can hear it now. I've tuned my ear into that when I'm listening to drummers. And if I hear somebody playing B20s, my ear, it's like a taste that you now recognize really well. You go, yeah, those are B20s. And you hear B8s, you go, yeah, that's a B8. Barry White, Paul Eam, Ed Green, Michael Bolton, those ones you hear, not with Barry White, but Michael Bolton, definitely Paul Eam, and Lionel Richie in the 80s. I wonder if that signature line came out in the 80s or not. I gotta check that out. But anyway, Paulium is a huge fan, and that guy, I love that guy. He's awesome. He's unbelievable. He's just amazing. He highly endorses the signature line of Paiste. This is a signature dry ride. Highly endorses. You can check him out talking about it. The signature line is something that's kind of between the two, B8 and B20. And it's incredibly hard to make these cymbals. That's why they're so expensive. Because Paiste has to go through a very long process of literally sculpting the cymbal. They have to shave off layers and layers of the metal after it's originally formed to get to a place where they then start hammering and lathing. They first have to think about like a sculpture. You take off to get to the inside of the thing. That's what they have to do with this. So signature lines are typically very, very expensive because of that process. And they mastered it so well that they are also very consistent. So you can literally buy one from a distance, call, some company and have them ship it to you, and you know what sound you're going to be getting, as a contrary to all B20 cymbals. So if I break this one, I call Paiste, they send me another one, it's going to be this sound. Now this one is haunting. It's not scary, it's just haunting and kind of divine sounding. You have the attack of the stick, that's the high note, so you hear that. And then you have this mid-range thing that happens that just carries on and on and on. And it doesn't, you expect the bottom to happen, but it doesn't. It stays in that mid-range and just floats along. And it's haunting. When you play this a lot in a song, you are just completely immersed in that sound, and it's beautiful. Paulium uses it all the time. He used it all the time. I don't know what he's using now. Probably still does, because it's a wonderful cymbal. This is a 20-inch signature dry ride. The bell is awesome. And this one records unbelievably well. Paulium used it recording all of his jingles and a lot of the Nashville stuff that he's doing. I think he's still using it. On the most recent studio documentary, he's showing how the Nashville thing works. You see it up there. I'm not sure if it's a dry ride. It might be just it could be a full ride. I think it's a dry ride, but anyway. It has this glassiness, and that mid-range is just beautiful. And it's not complex to the point where it phases with itself and creates some really weird harmonies. Moving on. Coming from the signature line, Paiste then comes out with their response to the traditional vibe, like a Constantinople vibe, like an old K. which Elvin Jones helped develop. Highly coveted 22-inch Paiste dry. 22-inch traditional, signature traditional Paiste ride. Signature traditional. So the process is the same. They have to literally shave off layers and layers and layers, much more than on a 2002, for example, to get down to a level that they've figured out works best for the cymbal and it being not as brittle, for example. And then after that, then they attack the cymbal with their lathing and hammering strategies to create something that is notorious of an old K, a darker complex sound, but it's not full-blown B20. It's a signature traditional. It's a special alloy that nobody knows except Paiste. So it doesn't create that complex phasing thing of B20 alloys that really started to bother me. It maintains that mid-range like the signature does, but with a touch more complexity, a touch more of harmonic harmonic density. See how you don't hear the gong like a B20 would do? It keeps that lower register is still not overwhelming the cymbal. It's still not creating this phase thing between all the harmonies and interfering with itself. I'm using a Regal tip Jeff Hamilton stick right here on all these cymbals. Bell sounds amazing as well. This cymbal I played throughout temporal time. So if you want to hear what it sounds like recorded, I just put out, and this also works unbelievably well in pop worlds because it's not completely that B20 thing. It has a very mature crash to it. I can't do it here. It'd be too loud for the phone. But I just recorded a song with a band I'm playing with here in Paris, and it's currently being mastered. No, it's pre-mastered right now. It's the last mixed version, and I matched this, my 22-inch, with with a 20. It's right here. A 20 traditional ride, signature traditional, and the harmonies blended together are spectacular. It sounds mature. They're probably, out of all the Paiste lines, the signature traditionals probably sound the most mature for me. The sound is like the wise old man, you know, of Paiste. It's just they're just beautiful. If you want to hear cymbals are getting too heavy. If you want to hear the traditionals in a pop setting, current pop setting right now, listen to the Rolling Stones. Steve Jordan is using traditionals, playing with the Rolling Stones. So there you go. They work. Where was I going with this? What was no, I had something else to say. Oh yeah, of course. So there's one here. Yeah. So when it comes to jazz, definitely a fan of the traditionals, the signature traditionals. But I really, really dig their new line called Big Beats, Paiste Big Beats. And these are, in my opinion, very close to what the old school sound was of the late 70s and 80s Paistes. If you get your hands on 80s Paistes, like my hi-hats here, the thickness of the cymbals it's not as thick as they are today. And the Paiste Big Beats, you get their 2002s, but it's kind of like it's being nostalgic of what Paistes originally, the thinness of Paistes used to be, but with something new to it. I don't know what it is yet, but there's something new about them that makes a distinction between the old 2002s and the new ones. These ones are, I don't know how, they are also haunting, but in a vintage way. Big beat, I don't know if they intended this, but big beat is a jazz term. You have big beat with Roy Haynes and hard bop and bebop, and they work really, really well in that environment. They work really, really well in James Brown environments. They are spectacular in every single style I've tried them with. They're spectacular, and they shine in. Actually, the 19-inch Big Beat is one that just shines beautifully in James Brown music. And a lot of great hits like the Beatles and to Elton John to even new stuff, playing Coldplay. They still work really well. Really, really well. Obviously, really, really well on ballads. They're definitely like a Lionel Richie cymbal. They work really, really nicely at low volumes. So if you're playing in little cafes and bars, these big beats, and you want that B8 clarity and comfort, but in a lower, more controlled, in a lower volume. So meaning you're not hitting as aggressively, but you still want that beautiful sound of B8s. These ones, I have the 20, the 15-inch hats I use all the time. They're my go-to hats. I have the 22, which is absolutely phenomenal. I have to do another video about that one. And I have the 19. And the 19 is just, on the gig that I do here in Paris, it's now, I've finally settled into the setup here. It's now the 19, the 20, and the 15 hats. I would like to do the 22, but there's just not enough room in the space where I'm at. Yeah, because typically the 2002s with the red logo, they are a little bit more, they're more beefy, you know, and the thickness of the cymbals a little bit more. You notice it immediately. big beats. These ones, and then just the lathing is reminiscent of wonderful 2002s, but there's a kind of, I want to say it's more of an eraser head. The lathing is different than the 2002s with the red logo. The 2002s with the red logo, the head, the dimples, you know, they're closer to, it's just that you can see that the head is larger. Whereas this one is more like an eraser head size. That one, 2002, it's kind of like a nipple size, you would say in cymbals, you know. It's just a little bit more pronounced. So why did I go from B20 to B8? There you go. That the harmony, the consistency, the controlled resonance without that phasing amongst the notes, not having to deal with that gongy bottom end that all B20s have, which is very hard to control, especially if you play loud. And if you play soft, it's still there. So it's a very interfering sound. And if you're playing pop music and rock and funk music and stuff that, you know, feel good music for people, and you're playing behind the band with B20s, there's always going to be that rub. And I just got fed up with it. So I don't play them anymore. I like to look at them, but I don't play them anymore. Did I play this one for you? It's not dissonant and gongy and out of control. It's glassy, precise. It doesn't last forever. There's not this long decay. It's a short decay. Beautiful cymbals. Best cymbal company in the world, Paiste. Thanks for checking this out. You know, I know that I don't want to be, you know, I'm not dissing on you if you like B20s. I get it. I totally understand. But you know, the alloys are important, and you know, that's why there are different companies out there, and some people prefer, Joey Kramer prefers the B20 vibe. I don't. And some drummers preferred it and then moved on to B8s. And some, like John J. Robinson, he was playing Paistes for a long time. I think he still is a Paiste artist, but he just put out B20 in endorsement of B20 cymbals with his thimble. So I don't know what that's all about, but you know, this how it goes. Maybe your ear evolves as you get older and you start going after other stuff. But it's now been 20 some years. B8s all the way for me, for sure. Ciao. More news soon.